Hardly a day goes by in the city of Chicago that someone isn't killed with a firearm. The cases are heartbreaking. Little boys and girls standing on their porches and going to school. And on August 7th, the Chicago police officer Ella French and her partner officer Carlos Yanez were conducting a routine traffic stop in the city. The person in the car opened fire. Officer French, age 29, was murdered, and Officer Yanez was severely wounded. I never saw such an outpouring of emotions in the city. I went down to Rita High School on the south side near Beverly, where they had the memorial service. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of women and men in uniform and just ordinary citizens standing, waiting for their turn to pay tribute to Ella French for what she had done for our city. 2 days later, we found out from the U.S. Attorney's Office that the gun used to murder her was obtained from Indiana through a straw purchase. That's when a person who can clear a background check buys a gun at a federally licensed gun dealer and gives it to someone who cannot clear it. What are we going to do about this? What is going to be done at the federal level to show that we're taking this seriously? Ours isn't the only city that is facing this challenge, and we've got to act soon.
Mr. Chairman, I am as concerned as you are, and as I'm sure all members of this committee are, about the rise of violent crime all across the country. I was in Chicago, as you know, at almost the exact time that the officer that you speak of was killed. I have gone to meet with the families of an ATF agent who was killed on duty, and I have stood on the mall with a candlelight vigil for many other police officers who were killed in the line of duty. The Justice Department is doing everything possible with respect to violent crime. In May of this year, I launched a violent crime initiative which brings together all of our law enforcement on the federal level to meet with, to coordinate with, cooperate with state, local, tribal, territorial law enforcement to fight this issue. Our federal agencies, DEA, ATF, Marshals, and the FBI are all deeply involved in this. Our programs, Project Safe Neighborhoods, continue in all these ways, and we're looking for large amounts of money to provide in grants to police departments. Specifically with respect to the gun trafficking that you're speaking about, as you know, Chicago is one of the task force cities that we've announced for purposes of tracing this gun trafficking problem. And we are doing so and finding the straw purchasers and arresting them as well. I could not agree more that this is a serious, serious problem that needs the attention of the entire country's law enforcement, and the Justice Department is very much involved in the fight.
I'm going to be meeting with those federal law enforcement agencies to talk about the strike force and what they're doing, how they're cooperating with state and local law enforcement. I hope to do it maybe even this week on a private basis, and then see what more I can do. I think we all have a responsibility when it comes to this issue. Let me ask you about the home confinement issue. We all know under the CARES Act there was an allowance for that possibility, and we know that since March of last year, more than 33,000 inmates have been released to home confinement, including those released under the CARES Act expanded authority. Less than 1% of those inmates have been returned to BOP facilities for any rules violation. Do you agree that recalling the thousands of individuals who've successfully transitioned back into society would be contrary to the purpose of home confinement, which is to allow an individual, quote, a reasonable opportunity to adjust to and prepare for reentry of that prisoner in the community?
Senator, I very much agree that the home confinement program has proven successful, that it both relieved the pressure on the prisons with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic, but also gave people an opportunity to adjust themselves to their communities. And you are right that we have seen very few violations of the conditions. So I'm very strongly in favor of being able to continue this program.
Well, I'm hoping that we can get a definitive reversal of the OLC opinion that was dropped on the desk as President Trump left office, and make it very clear what will happen if and when, and I pray that soon, the COVID-19 emergency is lifted. I'd like to move to another topic which has already been addressed by myself and Senator Grassley. I really invite the members of this committee, if you don't believe me, type school board violence into your computer and take a look at what's happening. It's happening all across the country. In my state, as I mentioned, a 30-year-old man arrested and charged with battery, disorderly conduct, after striking a school board member at a meeting. California, father yelling profanities at an elementary school principal. His daughter calmed him down. He later returned to confront the principal and struck a teacher in the face who attempted to intervene. Ohio, a school board member sent a threatening letter saying, "We're coming after you." And after the board member posted the letter on Facebook, the president of the Board of Education for a nearby district reported his board had received similar threats. Pennsylvania, a person posted threats on social media which required the police to station outside each of that district's school. Local law enforcement is investigating the person who made the threats and will maintain a police presence at schools and school board meetings for the foreseeable future. In Texas, a parent physically assaulting a teacher, ripping off her mask, and it goes on and on and on. These are not routine people incensed or angry. These are people who are acting out their feelings in a violent manner over and over again. The same people we see on airplanes and other places, same people, some of whom we saw here on January 6th. So when you responded as quickly as you did to that school board request, did you have second thoughts after they sent a follow-up letter saying they didn't agree with their original premise in their first letter?
Senator, I think all of us have seen these reports of violence and threats of violence. That is what the Justice Department is concerned about. It's not only in the context of violence and threats of violence against school board members, school personnel, teachers, staff. It's in a rising tide of threats of violence against judges, against prosecutors, against secretaries of state, against election administrators, against doctors, against protesters, against news reporters. That's the reason that we responded as quickly as we did when we got a letter indicating that there were threats of violence and violence with respect to school officials and school staff. That's the reason, that's what we are concerned about. That's part of our core responsibility. The letter that that was subsequently sent does not change the association's concern about violence or threats of violence. It alters some of the language in the letter, that we did not rely on and is not contained in my own memorandum. The only thing the Justice Department is concerned about is violence and threats of violence.